This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, SiriusXM Channel 158, iHeartRadio, YouTube TV, the VSiN Watch app, any of our local affiliates, wherever you're watching or listening. We appreciate it. One more hour to go here. Coming up in 30 minutes, we will have Jay Morrison, Bengals beat writer for Sports Illustrated, stop by the program, give us his thoughts on the game coming up this weekend against the Vikings, the status of the franchise with Joe Burrow out for at least the next 3 months. Can they stay above water with Jake Browning and company? We'll get into all that. Best bets at the end of the hour. We'll look at the marquee college football games of week 4 coming up and plenty of NFL as well. But from football to football, you have a couple of bets that are about to be in play, correct?
Yeah, sure. Juventus is taking on Dortmund. It's day one. It's match day 1 of the Champions League. So we do have Juventus taking on Dortmund. I have over 1.5 total goals. And then Tottenham on the three-way against Villarreal. I believe the full term is Villarreal Club Football, whatever. My analysis for this is that I asked on Twitter for bets, and then these were the first 2 that came to me.
Nice.
So let's go.
I was honestly about to ask you, how do you have the brain capacity for all of this? Plus, you're doing the pod. Plus, you're doing all of your off-season basketball stuff that you've been working up. So, so that's how. Just ask online, and you shall receive.
I will say, I am making a dedicated effort this season, this football season, to follow this a little bit more. I enjoy the sport. I've been waking up in the mornings and watching Premier Leagues as I'm getting ready for our show on Sundays and whatnot. I do work on Saturday mornings as well. So I'm trying to follow it a little bit more. But right now, my depth of knowledge in terms of following it is not to the point where I feel like I can accurately handicap anything. So I'm just trying to watch a little bit more, learn a little bit. And Champions League is the best of the best. So why not?
All right.
What do you like?
I'm here for it.
I think you were telling me that you were a really big Real Madrid in this matchup here. Pretty big favorites on the three-way line, though. Minus 275. A little chalky for my mind.
Yeah, I can't do it. Just too much, too rich for my blood. Thought about it but couldn't get there. One of those.
Tough spot for Chelsea coming up this weekend, too, because they start group play. I don't know how. Luke, if you're back there, you could tell me how teams respond. But Chelsea plays tomorrow, excuse me. And then they play again. Premier League match play starts up again this weekend, too. So I do wonder of how these clubs, I'm asking this question, maybe somebody at MeJBT can tell me, how these clubs weigh the importance of playing in the Champions League, the start of it, versus match day week, whatever it is, like 6 now in the Premier League, and how important those are. Yeah. And maybe it's going to be a fate of Chelsea coming up this weekend.
That is a great note, though. Please.
I was also thinking, no, just go ahead.
Please tweet into the show if you have any comments, you like our bets, like our discussion, or if you don't, because we always love a difference of opinion, at MeJVT, at Storm Buonantony, at VSiN Live. One person already chiming in, a colleague of ours, Kelly Bidlin, making the claim that regular Oreos are better than double stuffed Oreos, which is absolutely criminal for the record. Criminal.
He also misspelled double stuffed, so.
Can't trust him.
Correct. It's STUFT.
I have made it known on previous programs here on the network that I like to take 2 double stuffed Oreos, smash them together to make quadruple stuff. I know technically that's basically what the mega stuff Oreos are these days, but I don't trust the consistency of those things. I think it makes the filling taste a little bit different. So I stick to my guns on that one. Double stuff is the best for the win.
I will try it.
Do it.
That is an experiment I feel like I want to try.
Do it.
Today.
Okay, let's get into real quickly, because for anyone who wasn't with us hour 1, you can always download Money Moves in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts. You and Mitch Moss have a new podcast that is here on the network, Pod to the Futures. And you guys are talking about all these different futures angles. Can you give some folks a little tease as to what to expect and kind of what the sense of that show is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it sounds like. It's updating all these leagues, these sports from a futures perspective. No game-to-game basis. It's just all, hey, what did we see from week 2 in the NFL? What are we looking at? What are the adjusted odds to win these championships, awards after these couple of weeks? So this week we talked about a couple of futures that I have added, including my love for Tyler Warren for the Indianapolis Colts, breaking down Offensive Rookie of the Year, and some long shots there, as well as just some thoughts of just what the futures market looks like. And one of the questions I asked Mitch, the Green Bay Packers, now the clear-cut favorite to win the NFC. Do they deserve that? Are they a team that rates higher than the Philadelphia Eagles with Micah Parsons and a defense that looks greatly improved, and whether or not there's other things that are worth playing here in the grand futures market. So it's futures every single time, and we're going to do it Tuesdays. I believe we're still working on putting the feed up in terms of the podcast feed, but should be up on YouTube shortly. And hopefully check it out, like, rate, review, subscribe.
That's fantastic, and I think it'll be good
for
our. No, I'm serious. I'm serious, especially for our show too, though, because I think sometimes that we can get so caught up in the day-to-day and the games that are coming up this week to know that you'll consistently have such a good handle on the futures market for not only football but a handful of different sports. Your point about Tyler Warren, really wish I had him started in my fantasy lineup this week instead of Brock Bowers, because I was under the impression that Bowers was going to be utilized a lot more.
Yeah, he was going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, just from a standpoint, I think I brought this up to you, and I brought this up to Mitch on the podcast today. The odd, I don't know how to term this, the odd way in which the market was kind of down on Tyler Warren. The receiving yards were just barely over 500 for the season. He's already got 140 or somewhere in that range. The fact that, when you looked at him for the longish odds to win, and I guess that, there's a lot of quarterbacks that win the award and whatnot, but the long odds at the beginning of the season to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and even now, we've seen it finally shift to about plus 350, but he was plus 450 last week. It's when I bet, or yesterday, which is when I bet it, but there's been this odd muted sense of what his role is going to be. Even day-to-day, Stormy, he's gone over his receiving prop each of the first 2 weeks. I think we're going to start to see that adjustment on his props. Now we're finally going to get those pretty high. He's a big part of the offense. They're using him to carry the football out of the backfield. He's one of their best run blockers by PFF standards. If you really break it down, he has by far been the best rookie, I think, so far.
Colts 2-0 to start the season, by the way, as well. And I still feel bad for Broncos fans everywhere, seeing all of the clips of them thinking they have the game won. And then the drama, obviously, that ensued. Your Colts are a 3.5-point road favorite in Tennessee, taking on the Titans this week, total 43.5. You feel comfortable laying it?
No, I think it's going to be take it or nothing with the Tennessee Titans. I think there is something to be said of playing at home or the last 2 weeks, which is what they've done, in that dome against some competition. Here's the thing. They did it against the Broncos, so I think it's, they deserve it. But they've also clearly been upgraded. If you look, we talked about our market ratings and where these two teams were. In the first version of our market ratings, the Friday that you weren't here, the gap between the Titans and the Colts was maybe about 2.5 points. This would indicate a difference of nearly 5 points between these two, depending on what the number is and how you view home field. Again, I have it at 1.5 points. The Colts have clearly been upgraded by the betting market. You're laying 3 in the hook on the road against a divisional opponent. That, to me, screams, all right, we've upgraded this team. The question you have to ask is, now are we at the point where it's maybe upgraded a little bit too much, and is there a chance to come back in and buy a little bit low on the other group? The Titans did cover week 1, but obviously failed to do it last week against the Rams. I'll be very interested to see this. I mean, let's use that as a point. The Rams, some people consider, and Mitch even brought it up on our podcast today, a team that can be on par with the Philadelphia Eagles. That the market believes, as we just discussed, the 3.5-point spread, is only 2 points worse, potentially, than Philly. Maybe even less, 1.5. The Colts, by this standard, they're laying 3.5. The Rams were laying, 5.5 last week against Tennessee?
Yeah.
Or do we really think that this team has been is that much of a difference? There's clearly been some sort of an upgrade. So I am tempted to come in and take 3.5 at home with the Tennessee Titans.
I think I'm still just a little bit confused as to what the Titans are exactly at this point.
I think that's fair.
But we'll see.
I mean, they probably shouldn't have been in that game. You and I were watching that, and we didn't have our eyes on it fully, but tracking that box score, and as we were looking at little moments, the ridiculous Cam Ward touchdown throw that he has, the fact that they get a late turnover first half and they kick that field goal to win the first half and go up 13-10. But statistically, giving up 7 yards per play at the break, getting absolutely outgained, and then in that second half, what happened? All hell broke loose, dam broke, and all of a sudden you get flooded and the Rams pull away and win comfortably.
Speaking of all hell breaking loose in the second half, I feel like that's what happened in the Cardinals and Panthers. And Arizona got stunned a little bit with how Carolina started to come back. And listen, it was a rough start for the Panthers in that game. The sack, fumble, touchdown to open the game, very dramatic. But it felt like the second half in particular, like Bryce Young really played well. The Panthers as a team came together much better. The defense started to look a lot better. They do lose 27-22, but had the backdoor cover on that number. They are getting 5.5 at home this week to a division rival in the Atlanta Falcons. Total 43.5. Do you think they can stay within a number again, this time at home?
I don't know. I feel like I got away with one last week. I mean, because you're right. After the first 2 drives, Bryce Young played way better. And so
it was ugly there for a minute, and you're like, what are we getting ourselves into? But dialed it in completely differently.
Right. So I think that there's something to be said of they're not this bad. Do they deserve to be catching 5.5 against Atlanta? I don't think Atlanta's any great shakes defensively. I think that here, put it this way. I'm definitely on the side of Carolina or nothing in a game like this. I just feel a little gun-shy considering that I feel like I got away with one last week after another rough start. But I don't want to back off my thoughts of saying that this team is going to kind of carry the torch on from the end of last year and then watch them start 2-1 against the spread and stay inside of this number and not really get in on something that I really did believe that was the case. So this one I want to look a little bit more into. And I can't really freak too much out about Atlanta's offensive performance in week 2 because that was Minnesota. But I can freak out a little bit about the lack of offense in week 1, can't you? Mm-hmm. Against Tampa Bay, who is nowhere near the level of what Minnesota is defensively.
And again, needed the backdoor in a second half rally in order to get to that point where they did against an Arizona Cardinals team that I don't know how you feel about Arizona, but I'm not particularly high on that team big picture.
I mean, you might be right about that. There's a lot of love for them, and they've looked pretty kind of like the first 2 weeks.
And now, by the way, add in all of those injuries to their secondary, which is significant. And again, presents a little bit of intrigue, I think, for this week against the 49ers. Yes, they have a lot of San Francisco 49er wide receiver and pass catcher injuries, but could they be in a position to take advantage of what is such a depleted unit on the back end for Arizona? Okay, we do need to take another time out here real quickly. We're going to shift gears from the NFL back to a little bit of our college football talk. We have 3 games this weekend that are top 25 on top 25 crime, including one game I know the two of us are particularly interested in. Big noon kickoff, 10 a.m. Mountain Time kick in the Big 12. Utah and Texas Tech should be a banger. We will preview that and more when we come back here on Money Moves. This is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Folks, make sure you check out Juice Reel, trusted marketplace for buying and selling picks with transparency on the Juice Reel app. Sellers sync their sportsbook accounts, get their full betting history imported directly from the books. No screenshots, no fake records, just facts. You can follow verified bettors with real results. Some big names on there as well. Download Juice Reel today. That's juice like orange juice reel, spelled R-E-E-L. Juice Reel.
He's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Stormy Buonantony. Back here on Money Moves, diving into a really intriguing college football slate coming up in week 4. A lot of potential ranked on ranked and conference on conference crime coming up this weekend. And I want to start in the Big 12 with the big noon kickoff game. A little kegs and eggs out there in Salt Lake City as Texas Tech visits Utah. It's going to be a 10 a.m. local Mountain Time kickoff. Utah opened a 4-point favorite. We're seeing this down to 3. The total up from 55.5 to as high as 58.5, but seen some market buyback now. Consensus 57.5, and this is the first real test for both teams. Yes, Utah saw UCLA to open the season, but we know now UCLA is not good. Just got blown out by New Mexico, fired their coach. Texas Tech, meanwhile, 3 straight blowouts for them against lesser than competition. I thought last week could be a potential look-ahead spot for them, knowing that this Utah game was on the horizon. Still just torched Oregon State, so now we know about that situation. They are the highest scoring offense in the country right now, averaging 58 points per game, and their quarterback, Baron Morton, second best quarterback in the country in terms of passer rating.
Yeah, I'm going to be, like you said, you've said all the right points, which is, do we know what these teams are? They haven't really played anybody, all that stuff. I think maybe you can make the argument Texas Tech at home last week, a little bit more of a comfortable situation than going to Laramie, but did better with a lesser opponent before a big conference game. But again, I think it's easier, and I think Oregon State's like really bad.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something that maybe you don't take too much from. For me, it really starts. I mentioned this going into the game against Oregon State, and I talked about this, local Saturday mornings as well. The thing that has stuck out about Texas Tech is defensively, again, against these lesser opponents, but they've graded out really well. They're 23rd in adjusted EPA per play allowed. If you look at yards per play, they technically graded out better than Utah State by a couple decimal points. And their ability to pressure opposing quarterbacks has been very impressive with their 2 bookend rushers. On the flip side, again, with the caveat they haven't really played anybody, Devin Dampier has dropped back 99 times so far. He has been pressured just 16 times. That is a pressure rate of that's 16 total dropbacks. It's a pressure rate of 16%. That's wild when you look at the ability of him to just sit back, pick teams apart. His ability to scramble, obviously, is something that you can negate some of that pressure with. I think that's really going to work for them as well. I'll call me Utah curious in this game. I think that if we're going to, for sure, if you're going to give me something under 3, I'm in. I'll lay 2.5 with Utah. I just don't think I'm going to get that.
When we were going through our rundown this morning and putting in our best bets at the bottom, I wrote and then erased, if we get Utah minus 2.5, I want it. Because of exactly what you said there. And I think that the pressure allowed on their quarterback is so key, because I don't feel like a lot of people realize that this Utah offensive line could be a contender for one of the best in the country this year. I think even preseason, Phil Steele had them as his number 7 offensive line coming into the year, and they have done nothing but deliver with a mobile quarterback behind them as well, so that even if there was to be an issue, he can run around and do something. Also, Texas Tech has not seen a defense to their caliber. This is a team that is very good up front on both sides of the ball, and Utah's defense is for real, in my opinion. So this is going to be a great game. I don't know if there's going to be anything ultimately that I will get down on as a best bet this weekend, unless we get underneath that key number of 3. But I cannot wait for this one, and it's one of those games where I'm very glad that I'm working the night game so that I can watch this from start to finish and get a real grasp of what these two teams are. If you like one team more than another, is now the time to try to bet them for the conference or to make the playoff or anything like that? How do you view it?
I would think so. I mean, Adam brought it up, so I've added a couple of futures. We're going to talk about them later for college football. The one that does stick out is the fact that, first off, Texas Tech in the futures market ahead of Utah. When you look at that dynamic, one spot's got 60 for Texas Tech, 90-1 for Utah. If you get this done, if you're Utah, your next couple of games, or excuse me, just how the schedule breaks down for the rest of you, it's kind of open season for Utah after this. Yes, you have to go to West Virginia. You get Arizona State, but you get them at home. At BYU, Colorado, Cincinnati, both at home. You'd have to go to Baylor. That's going to be a difficult game. And then K-State, we'll see what Kansas is at the end of the year. Might be a plucky group too, but this is a schedule that has opportunity in front of it if you're Utah, should you be able to get this done against Texas Tech. Slippery spot next week, because you get West Virginia on the road coming before a bye. So it's coming off, if we're assuming in this experiment that they have won this game against Texas Tech. That's kind of a tricky spot for you, but I would assume that, yes, if you're going to get this kind of a win, this is a heavyweight win that will help toward your resume to get an at-large bid in the conference and put you in the driver's seat to win the conference potentially, or at the very least get to a Big 12 championship game.
Okay, how about number 22 Auburn at number 11 Oklahoma, 3:30 Eastern ABC kick in Norman. The opener on this one was Oklahoma minus 4.5, peaked at 7. We have seen this come back down to 6.5. The total slight tick down from 49.5 to 48.5. Big story here, Jackson Arnold, who Oklahoma essentially threw away, coming back to Norman. Yes, revenge on the mind. This Auburn team is very different than the one you've seen the last couple years, but you can say the same for Oklahoma. John Mateer, who replaced Arnold coming over from Washington State, has been everything they hoped he would be. How do you see this one shaken out?
I mean, it's number 1 team in the country defensively by EPA standards, the Oklahoma Sooners. They have been, Venables has done such a good job with this team, and I've kind of come around on just blindly believing I'm going to get a well above average defensive effort from Oklahoma in almost every single one of these games. And Jackson Arnold has not played a defense yet of this caliber. The Baylor, as we saw, was a sieve in that game and still has its own defensive issues. This is going to be completely different. Are you going to be able to, on the road, against this team, find any sort of offensive success? Because the flip side of this, we talked about that game against Baylor in the sense of there was some worry that they couldn't throw the ball downfield because they were running the ball so well. You're not going to be able to do that here against Oklahoma. So if we're under 7, I mean, I'm pretty tempted to go with the low-hanging fruit here. I really trust in Oklahoma defensively. And you've mentioned it. John Mateer, with his offensive coordinator here in this system, they've hit the ground running, and there really hasn't been any slowdown in any way.
I am glad you brought up that Baylor game, because unlike Texas Tech, Utah, where they haven't really played anybody, we do have a sample for both of these teams playing a good non-conference opponent, right? Because they played Baylor. We saw Oklahoma in their game against Michigan, so we have at least some framework of what they look against a real legit P4 team. How about Illinois, Indiana, number 9 versus 19, Big Ten clash in Bloomington. A lot of people complaining saying this isn't the big noon game. Give the Big 12 some love, okay? It's going to be a great game. At DraftKings, this game actually opened Indiana minus 2.5. We're out to 4.5. Total 52.5. How do you view this? So Illinois has had their kind of prove-it game already at Duke and did deliver. Indiana hasn't really had to do that yet, but has scored 56 and 73 points their last two games against Kennesaw State and Indiana State.
Yeah, and they're a group that kind of likes to run. Cignetti seems like a guy who likes to run the score up a little bit in those situations. I don't know really what to do with them. And I think you kind of throw out some of the metrics that we've seen up to this point because you just don't really know how much of that is actual and how much of it's just kind of noise at this point right now. I don't really know. We have no ifs, ands, or buts about it. College football has not been kind, so I haven't had the greatest read at this at all. My initial thought would be under the total. I do think this could be what did you say, 52.5? 52.5? That seems pretty high for what could be a time of possession type game, especially for Illinois. The way that both teams, I think, could play defensively and match up with one another. And I am somewhat surprised, just mildly surprised, that the market does think that Indiana, at the very least, is around a point better than Illinois. I would assume these two teams are pretty close to equals to each other, by my measure. But this is one where I think you can make the argument it's a relatively well-priced game with where we're at, outside of me thinking that maybe the total's a little high. And
yet we're seeing apparently even more love go toward Indiana at home, 5.5 some places here showing up. I'm going to save Miami, Florida for a little bit later because I do have a best bet in that game. But is there another one, last 90 seconds, you want to throw out there real quick that caught your eye?
I mean, we talked about it with Burke, Purdue, and Notre Dame. I don't see a reason why not to come back to the Boilermakers. Use them, and we talked about them against USC. As we talked about with Burke, they were really inside of that number the entire game, never any danger of slipping out of it. And if Notre Dame is as hard for defense as it looks like right now, I mean, we're talking about a 99th in the country by EPA standards if you're looking at it. This is a number that, again, a team like Purdue, which is just businesslike, has some ability to at least generate explosives on offense, can take advantage of a defense that would you say it's kind of on par with USC in the way that they play and the level at which they are. So I would be pretty tempted for Purdue. And I'd say, too, I don't think you're falling into a trap or a spot, if you will, if you're Purdue. This is a team that is trying to climb its way out, a program that's trying to build. You're not going to fight well against USC and then go and, I think, slip against Notre Dame. I think, as seeing Barry Odom up close out here, he's going to have them ready for every single one of these opportunities. So, with Notre Dame's issues as well, any thoughts on the total? I know it's high at 55.5, but would you lean over? I mean, we talked about it, right? That was part of the notebook. I mean, Notre Dame overs, and this opened 52.5. It's up to 55.5. I think that's it. Again, I like C.J. Carr. He looks pretty good. I would trust that Notre Dame is going to be able to generate offense here, and I would trust that Purdue is going to generate enough to not only stay inside of this number, but help it get over the total. Okay, good stuff. By the way, it looks like 92% of the handle here at Circa is laying 26.5 with Notre Dame. So you are on the other side of that one as that number has grown here at Circa specifically. Those betting splits, by the way, vsin.com/subscribe. You get access to all of them if you didn't know. We're going to talk Bengals next. Talking with Jay Morrison after this.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Lots of quarterback injury news this week in the National Football League as we welcome you back here to Money Moves on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Stormy Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you. The most significant of which, no doubt about it, Joe Burrow, quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals, out for at least the next 3 months with a grade 3 turf toe injury. And to help us find out the latest on all things Burrow and the Bengals moving forward, Jay Morrison joins us here on the Progressive Guest Line. You can follow him on X at @ByJayMorrison. Covers the Bengals for Sports Illustrated, head over to BengalsTalk.com. And before we get into kind of where things move forward to this week, I am curious what the collective sigh or emotion was for the Bengals and their fans as a franchise with that news coming down from Joey B.
Yeah, I think in the moment there was hope that it wasn't going to be as serious as it was, and it's never shock when you see that guy get hurt. I mean, it's just something he's had to deal with his whole career. But then the news comes out, and it just yesterday around the building, it didn't feel like they were 2-0. It didn't feel like they had won a game the day before. There was just kind of a pall. And you know, both Zach Taylor, the head coach, offense coordinator, Dan Pitcher, we talked to them. It was like I don't know if they were reminding themselves or they were trying to remind the media, but they're like, hey, we are 2-0. We are in a good spot. but you lose a guy of Joe Burrow's caliber, and obviously that ripples through everybody.
Jay, since the injury, there's been some comparisons to the situation that Andrew Luck found himself in. Obviously, both in their sixth year. That's when Andrew Luck retired. I don't know if Burrow's retiring, but do you think the situation for this offensive line, the lack of protection, the front office, and what they have failed to do with that, is that on the same caliber as what Andrew Luck went through in your mind, or is that an unfair comparison?
Yeah, I'm not sure all the moves that Indy made or didn't make. I don't think it's fair to put all of this on that. Certainly, the front office is culpable. I mean, they have made some missteps, and maybe the biggest one was this offseason, the way they approached the guard position. I mean, Joe Burrow was out there Sunday with a rookie third-round pick at left guard and a guy they had signed off the street 2 weeks before at right guard. That's not ideal. But a lot of this comes down to Zach Taylor and his offense and how much they drop Joe back and just the volume of chances for him to get hit. And it comes down to Joe, too. He is a magician when he gets out of pocket and makes things happen and scrambles around and extends plays, and that lends to taking more hits. And the thing is, like, this one, the wrist injury in 2023, those weren't cumulative injuries where he was just getting beat up so much that a part of his body broke. They were freak one-play incidents. So it's really hard to kind of pinpoint one thing being to blame. There's I think a lot of it, you wonder, if Joe Burrow played behind a great offensive line somewhere else, would these injuries still happen? Is it just what his body is?
Bengals beat reporter for Sports Illustrated, Jay Morrison, joining us here on the Progressive Guest Line. And for those of us that are in the betting world, you look at some of the numbers where the Bengals entered Sunday as an odds-on minus 155 price to make the postseason. They're now minus 215 to miss the playoffs. If Joe Burrow is available to come back early to mid-December, are the Bengals able to tread water enough with a guy like Jake Browning and the issues that they have had, whether it be the offensive line or defensive line, for him to come back to a situation where they're in a position to compete in the playoffs? How do you see things shaking out big picture for this team?
I think it's going to be a tough climb, but I think it's possible. It's crazy. If you ask me, their over-under win total was 9.5 when the season started. It's 7.5 now, and they're already 2-0. That's not a lot of faith. We saw this in 2013 when they lost Burrow with the wrist injury. Jake Browning came in and went 4-3, and he beat teams with winning records. He beat Jacksonville when they were playing for the number 1 seed. He went into Arrowhead in Week 17, and they had a lead in the fourth quarter, and they ended up losing that game to the eventual Super Bowl champs. But the way he played when he came in for Burrow in 2013, that got Brian Callahan, he was the offensive coordinator at the time, that got him the head coaching job at Tennessee. That same opportunity is there. Jake Burrow can get himself, Jake Browning can get himself paid with a good performance this year. Dan Pitcher, the offensive coordinator, can probably get his name in conversations for being a head coach next year. Zach Taylor, if he gets this team to the playoffs with Jake Browning in 15 games, maybe he wins Coach of the Year. There's a lot of opportunity here. I don't think it's the sky is falling narrative that kind of seems to exist outside of Cincinnati. Jake Browning is a really good quarterback. And one thing to remember is he has spent a lot of time, even though he had those 7 games in 2023, he spent a lot of time throwing to T. Higgins, throwing to Jamar Chase. In 2022, Joe Burrow missed almost all of training camp with an appendectomy. In 2023, he missed all of training camp with a calf injury. So Jake Browning has taken a lot of reps with this offense and the stars of this offense.
So to that point, does this offense change much in terms of like snap to snap, their reliance on the passing game? Do they run the ball more? Do you think there's any change in the way they operate this offense with Browning now under control?
Yeah, I think they do. And we kind of saw it in 2023. Joe Burrow hates going under center. He doesn't like to turn his back to the defense. He likes to see everything in front of him. He's so fast at processing. And I think there's more they can do, get under center, use more play action, run the ball more. They've really found something special with Chase Brown last year that the running game hasn't got going this year. But Jake Browning is very, very mobile as well. And they like to run a lot of naked bootlegs with him. So I think we could see it. I don't know if the volume of of pass to run, that percentage is going to change. But I do think the way they approach the offense could change some and look a little bit different. That they will figure out a way, and that's the other benefit here is they've done this before. They know what Jake's strengths are, and they will tailor this to fit him best. And I do think we'll see a little bit more of the run game and a little bit more under center plays.
You know, it's funny coming into this week against the Minnesota Vikings where everybody was expecting Joe Burrow in a potential MVP caliber season taking on the new young J.J. McCarthy, and what are the Vikings going to look with him? And now neither one of them are going to take the field in Minnesota this week. What are some of your early thoughts with how the Bengals compare to Minnesota on the road first week without Joe?
Yeah, it's funny. It's weird how this has worked out because I keep going back to 2023, but that's not the only sample we have with Jake Browning. But he gets his first career win as a starter against Jacksonville, comes off the bench a couple of days ago and beats Jacksonville. He gets a huge win against the Minnesota Vikings where they had that crazy T. Higgins catch. They win that game in overtime. They keep their playoff hopes alive. He famously said, "You never should have effing cut me," to the Vikings on the bench because the Vikings took him in 2019 as an undrafted guy, and they gave up on him in 2021. That's why he was in Cincinnati. So now here it is, the Vikings again. They've seen Brian Flores' defense. That's a very deep, hard defense to prepare for, but they just saw him 2 years ago. It's really interesting, you know, if Burrow didn't get hurt, would the Vikings? I'm not sure how hurt actually J.J. McCarthy is. Would they have made that move to go with Carson Wentz? It's really interesting, but I give the Bengals a chance just because of that. It's backup against backup. I think what you guys would know better when the Burrow injury happened. I think the line went from 1.5 to 5. And then the Carson Wentz thing comes out and it goes back down to 2 or 2.5. So this feels like it's going to be a pretty close game. And I was almost wondering if they were going to flex Tony Romo and Jim Nantz out of the call because they have CBS has their number one crew on the game, but they're keeping it that way, even with the backup quarterbacks in there.
Preseason, before we get you out of here, the big narrative was this defense. We're not talking about it much considering what's going on. What's your assessment of that group in the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, opportunistic. They've gotten some turnovers. They got a key one on Sunday with Trey Hendrickson forcing a bad throw by Trevor Lawrence. It gets picked off in the end zone. If that doesn't happen, the Jaguars maybe run away with that game. But that really kind of turned things early. There's still struggles there. They're still trying to figure things out, but they have gotten better. There was a lot of talk after week 1 where, they only gave up 16 points, but it was the Browns. The Jaguars have a pretty legit offense, and they gave up 27, but this defense still found a way to come up with 2 more turnovers and get stops. The first 3 drives by the Jaguars, 208 yards. The next 4 drives, just 64. So they're kind of learning on the fly. They're trying to get things figured out. It's a lot of top 100 picks on that defense that just haven't kind of met their potential, and that's what Al Golden's trying to get out of them. In addition to building a scheme, he's trying to build individual talent and get this group going. I think they're just going to get better as the year goes, but it was never going to be an instant fix. We'll wait and judge what Al Golden's doing with that defense by week 5, week 6. They've got to run a 5 straight games against playoff teams from last year. Big test coming up.
Jay, awesome spot. Thank you so much for lending your time. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Jay Morrison, everybody. Again, check out the work over there at Sports Illustrated. And if you haven't already, BengalsTalk.com. We're going to step aside. When we come back, getting into our best bets of the day, one play I really, really like in college football and another in the futures market that you and I are simpatico on. We'll see if we're right. Don't go anywhere. More Money Moves after this.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Roll along here, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Money Moves, final segment of the day. We got best bets coming up in a few minutes, but we got tweets as well. JVT, what's the word?
So there's a couple of things I would like to note here. First off, a shout out to one Paul Bovey, professional handicapper who participates in the Circle Friday Football Invitational. Dare I say, a friend, an alleged hairless man, according to Matt Humans. I have a $500 Filipino peso bill in my wallet. And the reason why I have that bill is because one night, Paul Bovey alleged that a young woman, probably about 5 years younger than you, knew who Robert Redford was. I said, there's no shot that woman knows who Robert Redford is. She did not. I won 500 Filipino pesos.
Lovely.
This is all a roundabout way to say, rest in peace, Robert Redford, and shout out to Paul Bovey. Robert Redford passed away this morning. So, very sad news. I couldn't tell you what movies he was in, but I know he touched a lot of people.
Legendary actor.
What's that?
Legendary actor.
Yeah. Could you name a movie?
Great Gatsby, right? He was in Great Gatsby.
Was he? Okay. Yeah. So, wanted to shout out Paul Bovey. Very good there. Now, I have a couple of tweets.
He was a hottie, by the way, in his day.
Paul Bovey?
I do not know Paul Bovey, but I do know Robert Redford was looking good back in the day.
Shout out to Brian. So I had asked our audience, hey, how do we handle these situations? We're trying to watch a little bit more soccer, keep in tune with it. Champions League match play starting today, but in the midst of a week in which some of these teams, I'm really only following the Premier League, but then we'll have matches coming up in league play. Brian checked in and said the better teams rotate players out the game before a Champions League game in the early stages to get points early. So it's the game before the UCL that you want to target. Famously, because I am one of the biggest Chelsea fans on the planet, many people, including Alex Blowers. How do I say his last name, by the way? Alex, tell me. Either way, was giving me guff because Chelsea had a tough draw the week prior in league play against Brentford. Well, that was probably the fade spot. So how about that? And Luke checked in, Devasta, producer of, what's that show after us?
Follow the Money.
Follow the Money, thank you.
Follow the Money moves.
My trust me, the synapses are not firing at all strength here today. Said that, not sure if it's a strong league trend or what, but he sounded interesting. Aston Villa notably struggled, winning just one of 8 EPL games following a midweek Champions League tie. Okay. So it was attributed to their first Champions League campaign, trips totaling over 4,180 miles. You do travel quite a bit, so learning some more about handicapping league play when it comes to mixing in Champions League play.
Very good. Did also want to update an injury real quickly. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN moments ago putting out Bucks right tackle Luke Gedeke, who went out last night, did avoid major injury, it appears, but will miss time, quote, possibly multiple weeks. The belief is that he re-aggravated a foot injury he battled during the week at practice. So the expectation, Bucks right tackle to miss some time. Let's get into...
That sucks, dude. They're getting injured a lot.
Yeah, a lot of teams are. This early season going has been brutal for a lot of them, as evidenced by the conversation we had last segment with Jay Morrison about the Cincinnati Bengals and what they're going through. Reminder, as always, if you missed any of the show, you want to catch up. That was a great, very, I think, insightful conversation with Jay. Money Moves always available in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the whole bit. It is time now, though, for our best bets of the day presented by G-Bank, the official bank of VSiN. G-Bank, remember, is built with sports bettors in mind. Right now, you can earn $50 in cashback rewards once you're approved and your account is open with a G-Bank Visa signature card. Most credit cards treat sportsbook and gaming transactions as cash advances, even when it's your own money. G-Bank's not going to do that to you. Treats them as regular purchases. That means no cash advance fees, saves you 3 to 5% on every deposit. Plus, you get 1% cash back on all eligible sportsbook and gaming transactions, 2% cash back on anything else you buy. You can apply now at vsin.com/Gbank. That's VSIN.com/Gbank. And I'm looking ahead to this Thursday night football game with the Bills and Dolphins. Curious your opinion on this. I fired already on a Bills first quarter -3.5 at plus money, plus 110.
My opinion is you have that opinion.
What?
I'm saying, that must be, if that's your angle, that's your angle. I have not, I'm going to fully admit, I did not look into the first quarter angle for the Buffalo Bills here in the Thursday night game.
Huge spread game. I love it. Yeah. Bills have the top offense in the league through 2 games in terms of total yards, and it's been extremely balanced. They're number 2 in rushing yards, number 2 in pass yards, number 2 in total points per game, and it starts early. They have had great opening drive scripts. Touchdowns on their first drives of each game so far, first against the Ravens, then the Jets, taking 7-3, 10-0 first quarter leads respectively. So covering this number in both games to this point. Taking on a Miami defense that has allowed the second most points in the league through 2 games. Even with Miami's offense waking up last week, New England was still up 12-0 in the first quarter. And the only reason Indianapolis didn't didn't score more in the first quarter was because they had that really long second drive of the game where they eventually scored a touchdown on said drive, but it was in the second quarter. So I feel like the early approach on Buffalo is good. Buffalo's defense isn't going to struggle against them the way that they did against Baltimore either. So give me Buffalo in the first quarter. I think they lead by at least a touchdown after one.
Yeah, I will just say this. Miami is not in a good spot. I'm going to read you a headline from the Sun Sentinel. Dolphins deep dive. Does Mike McDaniel survive the weekend? So it's not really.
You hear some of his the way that he's at the podium. He doesn't sound like an NFL head coach. He doesn't garner respect. Unfortunately, it seems.
I mean, he is pretty insightful sometimes, though. Quote: "To win games, you have to win the game, not lose the game." End quote.
That is how you win the game.
That is very true.
Is to not lose the game.
So yeah, I'm with you.
Nailed it.
By the way, Doug Wedge checks in. Neither of you have watched The Natural. For me, the best baseball movie ever made. I would assume that goes back to the Robert Redford thing.
Yes, I watched that movie a long time ago. My dad's a former baseball player back in the day. Loves baseball movies of all types. Loves The Natural, but I have not watched it maybe since I was in elementary school.
Okay, yeah, no, I've never seen it. So I'll add it to the list. In honor of Paul Bovey and Robert Redford, I will watch one Robert Redford movie sometime this week.
Okay, we both have Miami plays. Yours is on the futures board. Mine is specifically this weekend against Florida. I laid 7.5 with Miami. I think what's interesting about Florida last week, they played good enough to beat LSU in a lot of ways, a lot of positions, except for the most important one in DJ Lagway, who we've made the point a lot on the show. Is he still is he healthy? I don't know. He missed the entire offseason. He missed most of training camp. His reps with a lot of his teammates hasn't been there, and he's looked off. I don't anticipate another 5-interception day, but taking on a Miami team that is as good as it gets in the trenches on both sides of the ball, I have concerns about this team fairly, and I think similar to what we saw against USF last week, in these in-state recruiting type games, they are not going to let their foot off of the gas. So I understand a lot of people might not have trust for Mario Cristobal, whatever it is. I think this Miami team is for real and that they win by more than a touchdown.
Cool. I like it. Speaking of the ACC, so you like Georgia Tech, big picture. I added them plus 190 to make the playoff.
Plus 130 for me to make the ACC title game.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I figure you go back, we talked about this with Burke. If you go over their schedule, and we talked about all of these at some point throughout the show, Georgia Tech to make the college football playoff, Miami to win the national championship at 16-1, and then the Chargers plus 750 to win the AFC. But for Georgia Tech, if you look at that schedule, the things, because I know that there's an assumption that they make the ACC championship game, but what if they don't and they're just a 10-2 team, and two of the losses come to the trio of tough games on their schedule, which is going to be Duke, it's going to be Georgia, and then there's a third that I'm blanking on here. I think they go to Louisville, if I remember correctly.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so that's going to be it right there. If you take one of those games that we're looking at.
Oh, no, it's no,
Pitt.
they don't.
I'm thinking about Pitt.
And that's at home.
Yeah, it's at home. So if
Louisville was NC State when I was thinking about that.
So if we're assuming that Georgia Tech is a 2-loss team and the lone loss is going to be at Duke's going to be a tough spot, but I think this is going to be a resume that's strong enough, and we'll see what Clemson is. Clemson is a team that has, in years past, improved as the year's gone along. Mm-hmm. We saw it last year, too. They got off to the rough start, got blown out by Georgia, and then from a record standpoint, really did come along. That win could look much better as the season progresses. I think there's a reality that floating around a 2-loss team, and by the way, as we saw last year, I'm sorry, I'm not chalking up Georgia to some loss for them at the end of the year.
That's what I was going to say. I think everyone did that last year. We ended up getting an 8-overtime, 1-point game or 2-point game when all was said and done, back and forth, high scoring, everything. And if Georgia Tech is actually good like they have looked to this point and Haynes King stays healthy, why couldn't they be somewhat competitive in that game, right?
That is, I think, our worry for both of us. Haynes King missed the second game because they needed to give him time off. Looked fine in the game against Clemson, but for a guy that runs as much as he does, takes as much punishment as he does, are we guaranteed that he's going to make it through this schedule? That is a somewhat of a risk.
Yeah, I like this approach. Just even trying to look elsewhere in the ACC, it was tough to make some arguments because I am as high as I am on Miami, and clearly you are as well with the national championship play on them. But then looking at the schedules for some of these other teams, yes, Florida State has looked great to this point, but they still have to face Miami. They still have Clemson. They still have tough teams on their schedule that Georgia Tech just doesn't seem to have. If the toughest game before they go to Georgia, or before they face Georgia at the end of the season, rivalry week, is Duke on the road, then I think there's a lot of potential for opportunity. I love what Brent Key has done with that team over the last few years. I was actually on the sideline for one of his first upset wins. I think it was his first upset win at North Carolina a couple years ago when he was in the interim role, and it was massive. So really cool. That's a good reminder, though, as well. With that Georgia Tech Clemson game this past week, Chris Budden was on the sideline for it in the chaos when they rushed the field. She is on the Clemson-Syracuse game again this weekend. She'll be on our show tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern to break down what to expect with the Clemson Tigers, talk a lot of ACC with her. That is a wrap for us as of today, though. Coming up next, stick around. Follow the Money with Mitch and Pauly. Coming up, Derek Stevens and Paul Stone on the show today. You won't want to miss it.